Hi, this is Randy, and in this video, we want to look at using an alternate port where you listen on the internet on one port and then you translate that when you come internally. Now, I know we drew this earlier, but just let me quickly review or just this for this one rule. So what we're going to do is our goal is to, this is 18 down here, our goal is to be able to use an alternate port. We're just going to do this for IPv4. So IPv4, we have Remote Desktop Protocol enabled, and Remote Desktop Protocol listens on port 3389. But we don't want to advertise port 3389 to the internet out here. We don't want to do that. So what we want to do is we want to listen on port 5000 and have the firewall then translate that and leave the firewall and look for port 3389. So what you've got then is you've got your client out here and they open their RDP tool and they type in, the name or the IP address of how they want to get to DC1. And at the end of their RDP request, they put in the number 5000. So they're modifying the default behavior. Instead of using 3389, they're telling the RDP tool to use 5000. So let's move this out of the way and let's go look at this rule. I think actually one of the hardest things about this rule is just understanding what you're doing. And then the other thing is just to have an example, just be able to see it done. And then once you've seen it done, then you'll be able to do it. All right, so here I am back. I rebooted my firewall after doing the DNS rules. Just always a good practice. And I would have tested those. I would have gone out to the internet and come, from the internet tested that DNS was working. And having done that, and now I'm moving on to making my DC1 available on the internet. And my DC1 is my host 200 in the drawing. I'm 172.16.18.200. All right. So then I go, instead of going to rules, I go to NAT again. And here I go and I'm going to add another NAT rule. And very similar to what we've seen before. It's an enabled. The rules enabled. We're listening on the WAN interface. RDP is TCP only, and the destination is an alternate port. So we're going to go with other, and we're going to put 5000 in here. Okay, so custom port from 5000 to 5000. Now I just pulled this out of the air. Before you grab a port to do this, it's wise to go look up. You can look at where the well-defined ports are. I don't have the website handy, but on the internet you can go look at who is using what ports. There are 65,000 of them, and you just look for one that makes sense to you, one that's not currently being used, or you don't want to just so casually like I'm doing here just pull a number out of the air. You want to go out and be a little bit more intelligent to find an area that it looks like no one's using it, or whatever software is being used on that port is not software that you're using within your enterprise. So I just grabbed 5000 just out of the blue for the sake of this demonstration. So now I give it my internal address, which for me is 172.16.18.200. That's my DC1. And then here is where I specify the RDP. It's MSRDP and 3389. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, for my notes here, I'm going to say RDP and listening on colon 5000, 5000 being redirected to DC1 and 3389. And this is IPv4. Okay, so there we go. Just take a minute here and just review it. Okay, so the key to it is right here. The key is in the destination port specifying something other than 3389. If we just wanted to do 3389 to 3389, we would pick RDP, MSRDP from the list. Please once again be reminded that when you use an alternate port like this for remote desktop, you do need to add the port to your remote desktop request. What I mean is, if you're on a Windows machine, you open Microsoft Terminal Server Client or Microsoft Remote Desktop Tool, or yeah, Microsoft, I think it's Terminal Server Client. Anyways, you open your RDP tool, whether it's whatever version, Linux, Windows, whatever. You open the tool, and when you enter the destination, you just finish it with this alternate port. You can do the same thing with websites. With the website, you put in the IP address of the website or the URL, and you end it with the alternate port, because websites HTTP defaults to port 80 or HTTPS to 443. And if you want to use something other than those, then you have to specify the tool you're using knows what port is default, and we're modifying that behavior. We're saying, no, we don't want to use the default port. We want to use this alternate port. And so you have to tell the tool. But once it gets through the firewall, this is then coming in the firewall on 5000. Once it gets through the firewall, it's going to leave destined for this address and for port 3389, which is the default for MSRDP. So we're not having to change or customize anything, change the register or anything on our internal Windows device. We're letting the firewall make the transition for us. And we just save it. Save it and apply. And as we often talk about, then we would reboot. But now let's go look at our rules. And it's now in the list. So that's it. That's how you do an alternate rule, and we'll wrap up the video and we'll call it good for pfSense.